After the rebirth of board games and the rise of the Age of Sigmar, there was an ascension of war. Into this stepped Jay, a war chief destined to bring the word of that ascension. It is I alone who can tell you of the legend. Let me tell you of the days of glory and of war.
Hey Jaybirds, it's Jay here again, bringing you another video on Wargaming basics. Now, today we're going to be talking about pretty much the tools and equipment you're going to need to start your very own first army in whatever war game you want to pick. Now, certain war games require certain war materials, such as templates and, rule books and etc. And we'll get into those for those specific war games. But this is going to be a general purpose of what you need to have with most war games if you're interested in the hobby. Now, first thing to remember is whenever you get into a hobby, it is time and money to burn. That's what you're doing, okay? So when I say something is, a certain amount of money, you typically are going to go, oh my God, it's so expensive. Well, yeah, it's a hobby. Welcome to hobbies. And if you're not willing to spend that money, well, it's just not the hobby for you. We spend money on what we like. You want to watch TV all day, you're going to spend $50 a month. Pretty freaking expensive when you think about it. You want to, do whatever you want to do. You're going to spend money to do it. So without further ado, let's get started. So first thing you're going to need is some way to cut your minis out of the sprues that they come in. Typically, I like to use my sprue cutter on most things that are plastic and fine cast. This reduces the risk of me being cut, which is very nice, and it makes a very nice, square, uniform sort of cut. If it does mess up, I use this to clean it. The cost for these tools is relatively cheap. This one is probably the more expensive of the two. It's going to run you anywhere from $5 to about $20. You can pick these up at Hobby Lobby. You can pick these up at Hobbyton. You can pick it up at all sorts of little hobby stores, local gaming stores. And you can spend a lot of money on these, or, $5 to $10, which is what I did. So it's pretty expensive considering it's just for cutting minis out of sprues, but pretty useful. Now the cheaper of the two materials is definitely this one. This is a box cutter. I picked this one up at Walmart in 10 blades for, I think, right about $3. It was like $1.50 for this thing and like $1.20 for the blades. So easy to operate, very ergonomic. You can work with this thing for hours. Much more cheaper than an X-Acto knife and does the same job. This thing is a very cheap, very effective way. One thing to be worried about this though, if you're using it, is watch your hands, watch where you cut. I also use this a lot for my terrain builds when I use cardboard and various things that can cut with a box cutter. Okay. All right. Next thing you're going to need is some form of adhering your minis together. This here is super glue, and this one is going to be a plastic glue. Now, neither of these are a sponsor of this channel, by the way. Nothing is being sponsored. Hopefully will be in the future. But this one is super glue, very useful, used for metal, fine cast, and plastic if you really hate your fingertips. And this one is used for mostly plastic models. Now, you can also use plastic cement. You can use epoxy. I prefer these two materials though because these are easy to use, cheap. This one's going to run you about $5 to get Citadel plastic glue, but it's worth it because it's really good. It doesn't, it's easy to use. Use thin if you can. There's typically thick and thin. Use thin. Super glue is going to run you a little cheaper. It's not going to last as long though. This one, I think run me $2 at Michael's, whereas this one run me $6. But this one's already almost out, and this one's still got quite a bit of life left in it. All right. Next thing you need to know is ways to play the game. You'll need some form of tape measure, 9 times out of 10, or some sort of marker. I like tape measures. Here's why. If I need to measure 70 inches, I got it. If I need to measure 6, I got it. Get you one that's a little thick, that doesn't, bend a whole lot. This one's a Citadel one. I only picked this up because I always forget my tape measures, and so my local gaming store has these for sale, and I always have to pick one up because I forget one. But, tape measures, you can spend as little or as much. You can spend $20 and get a high quality, construction one that, some architect's using somewhere, or you can just spend $2 or $3 at your local, hardware store and get you one that 8 feet that does the trick, you know. It's really how much you want to spend on that one. Then you need dice. Now, dice are probably your cheapest equipment. Most of you are saying, what are you talking about? Dice are super expensive. No, they're not. High quality dice are expensive. And here's why. There are these things called dollar stores. You can go around and find them. Just $1, Dollar Trees, etc. Everything inside is $1. And they typically sell dice, usually in packs of 10 or 6, for $1 a piece. They aren't high quality dice. They aren't well balanced. But you can pick them up for $1 a piece. And you only need about 20 dice to really make your hobby kind of start happening. I like using high quality dice, and so I pay for high quality dice. I also have stopped paying for high quality dice because I have enough of them. I know when to stop. If you have that problem, go with cheaper dice. All right, so once you get past adhering everything together, we move on to painting. Now, you don't have to paint, and a lot of people don't. I like to paint. I think you should try to paint. It's not for everybody. Not everybody likes it. I get it. And it is a pain in the butt. It does take a while to do. But there's nothing better in this world than assembling your forces on your side of the table and getting them all together. And they're all sitting there in formation, and they're all painted. They're all based. They look great. And you're just going to have a good time with them. There's this feeling of pride and accomplishment that you just get from it. And it's indescribable, and it's fun. So I advise you, at least give it a whirl. Get a full army painted. Field an entire painted army. And you'll see what I'm talking about. It just is so much more fun when you have a nice painted army. Now, as far as paints, the two I typically use are MSP from Reaper. They have a factory in North Dallas. It's not too far from here. And they supply most of North America with these type of paints. These are exceptionally good paints. Very thin, easy to thin. They come in an eyedropper. You're going to pay about $3 or $4 for them, but they're worth every cent. Then you can use a typical Citadel. It comes in an ink pot, about $3 or $4 a piece. Once again, isn't cheap. Lasts you a long time though. This is only the second lead belcher I've had to buy, and I started playing, war games back in 2012. I collected orcs. I used this on every miniature. If it had metal, it had lead belcher on it. That was my base coat. So it lasts you a while. Definitely worth the expense. The other one I like to mention is Vallejo. Vallejo makes a good quality thin paint. I honestly don't like to order directly from stores. I like to buy through local gaming stores. So my local gaming store doesn't actually sell Vallejo. It only has Reaper and Citadel. So that's what I have. Now, the next thing you're going to need, obviously, is paintbrushes. You can go really expensive with paintbrushes. You can buy paintbrushes that are $60, $70 a piece. Mine are not $60 or $70 a piece. It's more like 3 to 4 per pack of 10. I pick them up from Walmart. I pick them up from Hobbyton. I pick them up from Hobby Lobby. I pick them up from wherever they sell them. And I pick them up cheap because I like to dry brush a lot. And so I run through brushes like constantly. So next thing you're also going to need is some way of priming your models. I personally paint. I brush on my primer. Very thin, very super thin coat of white. Whole milk's got a heavier consistency than my prime coat. And all priming is supposed to do is just put a layer on for your paints to adhere to. A lot of people like to use sprays. I use these on my terrain. This is some cheap old dollar, spray and dry matte white paint. A lot of people are going to tell you to start with black paint. I wouldn't do it. Start with white. I started with black. All of my orcs look like crap because of it, and I wasn't a very good painter. I'd start with white, and honestly, I'd pick up a $3 dill of ceramic white and dilute it down with as much water as you possibly can until it's basically milk, and then use that as your primer. That's what I do. Very effective, very cheap. Does what it does. It'll last forever. I'll probably be doing paint out of that ink pot until, I probably die. So next thing you're going to do is somewhere to dunk your brushes. I use anything that is a cup. Once again, not a sponsor. Now, the next thing you want to do is make you a wet palette. Now this, we'll go over the use of this later, but just go ahead and make you one. Basically, you mix your paints on here, and it keeps it nice and wet and easy for you. All it is any sort of container that has sort of a cup-like or tray-like appearance, wet tissue, in this case bathroom tissue, and then parchment paper on top. And what it does is it keeps your paints wet without actually diluting them. This is basically this matte clear that I put on there to seal my minis. I put that on there yesterday. It's still wet. Definitely worth your time, and it definitely makes a huge difference on keeping your paint jobs consistent, clean looking, and etc. So the last thing you'll need is something to dry your paints on or to sponge off excess. I like to use single ply bathroom tissue or paper towels. Whatever you use, make sure that the material is strong enough to, basically take you rubbing a brush against it without it coming off on the brush. Made that mistake, it looks terrible when you get done with it. So, in review, what we're going to be looking at is sprue cutter, box cutter, glues, tape measure, dice, paints, brushes, cup with water, wet palette, tissue paper, some sort of small tray, parchment paper, and something to dry your brushes on. That's all you need. All in all, this kit will run you, when you get done with it, the paints will run the bulk of the cost. You can spend as much as you want on paints, but just a couple, like 3 colors of paints, your primer, everything, it's probably going to run you $30, $40. All right, so thank y'all for tuning in. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and don't forget to check out my other video about the different types of models that you need to know about when you're putting them all together. All right, thank y'all for checking out. Y'all have a great rest of the week.